Good morning, gamers. I'm Mac, and today I have a question for you. Can you overland in an electric crossover? More specifically, can you overland in a 2024 Chevrolet Blazer EV, specifically my 2024 Chevy Blazer EV? Now, I leased this a year ago, and I have never really taken it off-road, so today we're going to learn how to do that together. To answer any question, first you must define it. So let's start, as all overlanding must, with a question. What does overlanding mean? Now, for a lot of people, it means crawling over rocks, it means doing very intense off-road trails, and if you look at my tires, you look at the amount of clearance, you look at the fact that this is a vehicle without locking differentials, without a body-on-frame construction, you know that this is not taking on Moab. But the question is, can you do the version of overlanding that I think most people want to do, which is going down a fire road or an unmaintained path, 15, 20 miles, camping, being self-sufficient, sleeping in or on the vehicle, and having a setup where you can pack it up or take it down in 15 to 20 minutes. So easy, lightweight, fast, move through the desert, move through the woods, do what you need to do. And I think this car can do it. I don't think you need as much as most people think, but I need to prove that. So let's get on the road. You absolute fool. You probably thought I would start off the road. But here's the thing about overlanding. Almost all of it starts on the road because, I don't know if you've heard, but roads are one of the main ways that we get places in this country. And while we all like to think of overlanding as this endless off-road excursion without the logistical part of it, realistically, if your goal is to explore as much of this country as possible, most of that is going to happen on roads like this, with corners, with bumps, with other drivers. And, you know, that is really part of why I'm starting to do more of my trips in this, my EV crossover, as opposed to my gas truck. Because, you know, a lot of my hours are just sitting in traffic, driving through, whether it's Southern California cities or even out on the highway, and the smoother, quieter, comfortable experience of an EV is really nice. And I also find that, especially if you're going overlanding, where you're gonna have to stop and get food and water and supplies, you know, generally, if you're in an area that's reasonably developed, you're not really going to be going that far from a major town that range anxiety is going to be that big of a deal. Because in a gas car, most of your fuel consumption off-road is idling and slow moving things where you're revving the engine a lot to get over obstacles and whatnot, but really you're not covering much ground. EVs are way more efficient in that environment. And, you know, on the road, obviously, I'll leave it up to you whether you think EV range anxiety is a big thing. I'll just put my take on it, which is anxiety is anxiety. It's a worry about a problem, whether that problem is real or not. And the longer I've driven EVs and owned them, the more I don't really think about it. I was leaving where I was this morning and, you know, I was like, oh, you know, before I go up there, I should probably charge up. But I needed to get lunch anyways, and the restaurant I wanted to go to had a charger nearby. And so I just stopped by, charged up while I ate lunch, and honestly I had to rush back to the charger because I didn't really want to pay for a full battery and tie up a charger that was mostly pretty congested. But, you know, I got in with no problem, charged at a Tesla supercharger, didn't really think about it. And now, you know, my car is reading 221 miles of range, and I'm just leaving the urban area sort of now. I'm only going up into Lake Arrowhead area, so it's a relatively developed area, but, you know, I'm gonna get pretty deep on some, you know, twisty mountain dirt trails and forest roads, and I'm not gonna really worry about the range at all because ultimately, like, as long as you can find a decent charger, I would say within 120 miles of your stop, you know, it's totally doable. And this kind of ties into my greater thing, which obviously, if your goal is to see the most insane trails and most complicated and technical trails possible, you shouldn't get an EV right now. The EV off-roaders aren't there. But I wanted to do this video because I think for most people, what you really want to do is go out there and explore off the beaten path. And, you know, in America, it's just not that hard to get to places that are really, really remote. And when I say remote, I'm not saying that they are far from civilization as the crow flies. I'm talking about places like where we're going right now, where, yes, Lake Arrowhead is not far from civilization, but what it is an area with a ton of, you know, undeveloped trails leading deep back into national forests. And, you know, if you drive 10 miles down one of those roads and set up camp, you might see one car that day. But if you go down you know, another 5 miles or so. If you're willing to cover 20 to 30 miles on dirt, does not have to be super technical, just out there exploring, you can get so far away that you get really in touch with an environment that feels undisturbed, that you're not going to see evidence of human, you know, behavior out there beyond the road. And, you know, that is limiting, right? You have to go where a road, be it a potholed, unmaintained fire road or a more well-graded, you know, forest track, goes. But if you truly want to get beyond where the road is going, if you really want to be out there in true wilderness, crawling over rocks and things like that, you need recovery gear. You need a winch, or you need another truck to recover you. You need to be willing to fix mechanical breakdowns in the wilderness. You need willingness to, you know, you need a jack for the vehicle. You definitely need a full-size spare. You need a lot of things. And as you add those things, you compromise the on-road experience, because the cheapest way into that is like an old CJ Wrangler, right? And that's a great vehicle for off-roading. But the reason we use the term overlanding is because most people aren't doing it as an ends to itself. Most people are not out there wheeling just to wheel. They're out there to go somewhere, to do another hobby. And this is sort of the impetus for this video. I was partially inspired by a Goth Babe video. I love him. His music is great. His videos are great. I love what he just did about the Tongass National Forest, whichever. But ultimately, you know, I think the value here is in exploring. And what Goth Babe pointed out is that overlanding is not a hobby. It is just a way to get out there and then do what you actually want in the woods. I would change that a little bit. I would say that overlanding is a hobby. You can do it as your main motivation, but I would say that for most people, it is not the best hobby to accomplish what they're looking for. And the reason for that is simple. The version of overlanding we all want is a version that we can afford, that is reliable, and in a vehicle that is capable. And honestly, those first things you can't really compromise on. You can't do this in an unreliable vehicle if you're not willing to really put yourself in situations where you might have to fix stuff with jerry-rig fixes and, you know, find a way into town to get a part and do trail fixes. And if you're really coming into this asking like, well, should I get a Subaru or a Tacoma? If you're asking that question, you're probably not ready for that. You also can't compromise on affordable. You can afford what you can afford, and mostly, I would say that you can probably afford less than you think, because if you're truly talking about overlanding involves going through areas that are relatively, you know, dense with brush and rocks and things like that, and scrapes and breaks are gonna happen. It's a fundamental truth of this. You are going to break things, you're gonna blow tires, you're gonna scrape up the side of the vehicle, and if you have to stretch your budget to get there, then, you know, you're not really going to be able to enjoy it in the same way, because, you know, when you have a $90,000 rig and you're leveraged up to your eyeballs for it, like, how can you take risks? How can you push beyond that? So the only other thing you can compromise on is off-road capability. And I think that is sort of the fundamental idea behind this EV exploring thing. Most people drastically overstate how much capability you need in order to get into truly remote wildernesses and get a real chance to explore the outdoors. So I want to prove that you can really do that in just a simple all-wheel drive crossover. It can run on gas or electricity. I like electric cars. I believe in them. And I really like the idea of doing this in a vehicle that if I want to in the winter, I can leave the heat on all night or have an air-conditioned space to sleep in. And I like doing it in a vehicle that's quiet. So to explain why EV overlanding or EV exploring is, I think, a better move for most people, let's jump on the dirt. All right, I made a mistake here, I think. All right, it's not too bad, but shit. If you notice, there's a bunch of ice under there. Generally, you don't want water in your car, but there's a reason I have a loose bag of ice in here, which is that I only brought my small cooler with me because didn't want to bring my giant one for a one-night trip. And I was gonna add more ice after it, you know, started to melt. I only have the essentials. 5 bratwurst and 3 Diet Cokes. I'm an American, goddammit. But I did get water all over my car. But let's dump this excess and get rid of the rest of that. So why is overlanding maybe not the best hobby for most people, because for most people, when they say overlanding, they want to get out into nature. And, you know, when you start putting it in the context of pushing the limits of your vehicle, you know, most of the world is accessible via dirt tracks like this, and most of the world that isn't is going to be really, really hard to do on your own if you're not pretty experienced. So I say, if you really want to get out there and explore nature, the first step is to get out there and explore nature. Everything else follows. And, you know, if you think, oh, what if I run into something that my vehicle can't do? You know, number one, a lot of the places you want to go are accessible via roads like this, where, yeah, you might get bounced around a little bit, but generally, you're going to be able to get there in most vehicles with a little bit of ground clearance and all-wheel drive. And, you know, if you get to an obstacle that you can't cross and you need to turn around and find an alternate, that's part of overlanding. And if you're not willing to occasionally bump into things that you can't do, ask yourself really, like, is this the hobby for me? Because ultimately, for most people, the road is getting to the place where the experience starts. And whether you want to go hike, whether you want to go, you know, make a good meal out in the woods, or practice your guitar surrounded by no one else, there's a million things you can do out in nature. And don't let needing a super capable rig, you know, really slow you down. Because here I am, you know, a mile or two off pavement, and, you know, it's fine. It's just a washboard dirt road, and there are sections that I wouldn't really want to do in this car, in the same way there are sections I wouldn't do in a Tahoe, in the same way there are sections that I wouldn't do in a built Land Cruiser. And it's just, you know, how far you can go is the core question. That's what makes it fun, is the stakes, is trying to push the limits. And when you're in a car like this, you can, you know, you feel like you're pushing harder even when you're going on relatively easy terrain. In the same way, it's easier to learn to drive with a Miata than a McLaren, because you can push a limit at a much more reasonable level than you can in a car that's that fast. So, just overcooked it a little bit over that, slowed down, easy peasy, you know? And that's what's fun, is you want to be out here in something that feels fun, that feels seamless, and in a car that you're never working the engine hard because it's a perfectly silent electric motor. Ooh, we got a little water crossing right here, hard to see, but shouldn't be any problem for just whoop, a little splash and some momentum, easy enough. These are not even all-terrain tires that I'm on, and you know, but you don't need to overthink it. You can just do a version of this that's fun and exciting without really needing to overdo it. And most importantly, if you get to a point that you can't cross, then go hike. You know, I go overlanding because I love getting out into the woods, but I'm not really real enough to do all my adventures with a backpack and on my own 2 feet. But what's fun is the feeling of, okay, I'm going to set a destination, I'm going to see if I can get there, and if I can't get there by car, I'll walk, and then I'll come back and do car camping. Because to me, that's the difference. I want to cook a good meal, I want to sleep really well, I want a nice comfy mattress, and I want some creature comforts. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to do the most hardcore possible version of this in order to do a version that's worth doing. Okay, so enough on EV exploring in general, why I love it, why I think it can really be something fun for a lot of people. Let's talk a little bit about the Blazer. Now, why I'm in this car is because I leased it specifically because I wanted an EV with some ground clearance and all-wheel drive that could do slightly more technical stuff than you're gonna do in a sedan. And, you know, trust me, I know the limits of this vehicle more than most. I've found the limits of my Tahoe because it's open diffs on either end. I know, I've done plenty of off-roading. I know the limits on this. The biggest limit is that this, like most EVs, does not come with a spare tire included. And if you don't have a spare tire, the limits are so low because tires get popped and you're not gonna wanna be too far from a well-traveled road. That's why I'm starting easy, something like this. This is Holcomb Valley Trail. There's a lot of cars that come through it eventually, and I'm not worried about getting stranded out here. And I'm also only going 5 or 6 miles off-road, so worst case scenario, I hike back out, whatever. And, you know, it's nothing so technical that you can't theoretically get a recovery rig out here. But the Blazer's pretty good for this because it's got 8 inches of ground clearance, it's got decent angles, I mean, not amazing. The one thing that's really gonna get in its way beyond the lack of spare tire is that it's got a really long wheelbase. So I'm much more at risk of bottoming out than I am at hitting something on the approach. And in an internal combustion car, that can be really bad because ultimately there's a lot of you know, delicate stuff down there sometimes, and especially in a crossover that maybe isn't built for this. You got to worry about, am I going to damage my oil pan, things like that. You know, in this car, I'm not super worried because most of the floor is just a battery, and the batteries are pretty well armored. They're designed to be able to take pretty big impacts from highway debris and stuff like that without being punctured. And you know, that's normal. That's one of the beauties of electric off-roading, is you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff of having a million components that can fail. You only have a couple that can fail. You know, any car can strand you, and you got to plan for that. In this car, really, ooh, whoop, huh, traction control kicked in there. That looks like a good camping spot. Is this the spot that I camped last time? No, but I really like it. And you know what? The sun's getting low. I wanted to go further off-road, but this looks like an awesome spot. And I'm also starving and hungry and totally down to pick this up in the morning when I feel a little more ambitious. So, you know what? I'm not too far from civilization, but I want to pop this off and show you what I'm seeing here, because I really like what I'm seeing. I've got to, hey, come on, grow up. All right, so here's the spot. It's pretty simple, but the reason I picked it is if we walk over this way, you're gonna see what I really like to see, which is the beautiful mountain overlook, which is, I mean, look at that lake. You got beautiful golden California sunlight coming down this way. We're arriving about an hour before sunset. And, you know, that's why we picked this spot and not pushing further, because ultimately the number one limiting factor beyond your money is going to be your time. And I think that's something, when we get so focused on the vehicle, we forget the hard part of this is making space for it, like any other hobby. So that's a big part of why I want to do this video, why I want to do this channel, is to show that, like, you can squeeze this in to a trip that you're already doing, where I had to do a work trip, drive up a couple hours, and I thought, man, I'm gonna be an hour away from some cool wilderness. Let's jump in, let's do it. I'm gonna bring a tiny cooler, I'm gonna throw a mattress in the back of the car, and I'm not gonna overthink it. And that's my number one piece of advice. Don't overthink it, because here we are, we got the Blazer, a little bit muddy. We'll get it more muddy tomorrow, but you know, we're out here, and I don't think there's gonna be another car that drives past all night, and I don't think that really I'm going to be missing anything that I would get if I went 15 miles deeper into the wilderness. And, you know, I still want to do that. I want to explore, but the first step is getting out here, and we did that. All right, time to do the worst part of this, which is, of course, unpacking and setting up camp. Now, one thing is I'm an overpacker by trade, and I'm trying to cure myself of that. That's part of why I don't bring my emotional support truck out on these types of trips, because guess what? You don't need that much stuff. So I got a chair. This is my sleeping pad and pillows, and also my table. We got a small cooler. This is one of those socks that goes over the window, and a big camping stove. I got some fuel and some other gizmos in a box back here. Ugh. Son of a bones. Heavy as hell. But this is where my lights and whatnot live. And that book, which isn't supposed to be in the dirt, but don't worry, I own it. I treat library books better than the books I own, but c'est la vie. I've owned that book for 3 years. I still have not even gotten to the start of them starting World War II. A 3-part freaking series on that. There's not enough time for anything, ever. So that's why I wanted a version of this that was fast to unpack and easy to do. That seat's folded, guitar for when I'm monkeying around out here. And then I brought this box. It's got some Reflectix in it. I was gonna make custom window treatment for my car, and I'm gonna keep it a buck with y'all. That ain't happening tonight. I had a 9-hour workday involving 7 hours of driving. Then I drove an hour and a half here and had to make a bunch of stops. And I'm tired. So I want a version of this that I can set up quickly and Well, I think I've found it because I'm gonna show you something. That stuff is ready. And if we take this over here, you're gonna see that I've already got the back. Oh, those are my reflectors covers for the Big Red. Ready to throw my mattress down. So I'm gonna throw my mattress down, I'm gonna open up my chair, and I'm gonna bust out my camp stove, and then we're set up. All right, well, that's camp set up, and it took like 5 minutes, I don't know, maybe 10. No tent stakes to deal with, no nonsense. Pretty lightweight setup, nothing crazy. I usually get a much better workout, you know, setting up Big Red when I have the awning and everything like that. And let's crack open a brewski and give you a tour. All right, brewski time. This is what I've been waiting for. Hell yeah. It's my favorite brewski. All right, let's crack that. Check it out. So that's a chair, you sit on it. That's a table, you put stuff on it. That's stuff to cook with. That's my water. It's my gear. Let's talk about the bed, where the magic happens, where the solo magic. Never mind. Anyway, here's my bed. Boom. Throw in right here, and I'm not scooted all the way up because I don't want to get my dirty feet all over here, but even with my chair not all the way back, I'm 5'6", I can lay down here comfortably. Plenty of room behind the passenger seat. That driver's seat's still in my main position, and car's running because things aren't charged, but it's a pretty nice place to sleep. I've got this for ventilation, so boom. Now I got a full window of ventilation with the screen down, and if that's not good enough, I can run the fan all night. If I'm really feeling lazy, I can even run the AC or the heat or whatever. I got a nice panoramic view to see the stars, so plenty of room to sleep back here. Me and Meg, my girlfriend, we have done 2 people back here. I wouldn't say plenty at that point, but there's room. And, you know, this is the version of it I like. I also like that there's room underneath where the seats fold for more storage, which is not true in Big Red. But, you know, it's a perfectly good place to sleep, and especially when you add in climate control. I think that's why I'm excited the most about electric overlanding, because mostly the expensive part of overlanding is like, how do you control your temperature and how do you control your power supply? And right here, I've got more battery than I know what to do with. I could charge my phone 100 gazillion times and never run out. I could charge literally whatever I want out of the car. But I will say that while EV overlanding rocks, the specific form we have now with cars like this, it's not fleshed out yet. As I noted, not the most capable car, definitely not the most capable tires. I mean, these are not really built for any real terrain. But, you know, the core thing of having a giant battery pack with you is pretty great. I mean, if you have a real Overlander, eventually you're gonna add a power system because you wanna run a fridge, all that stuff. But in the version of this that is maybe not fully fleshed out yet, the Chevy EVs specifically, well, not the Silverado and stuff, but the cheaper Ultium stuff, there's no real easy way to export power from the vehicle. There's no vehicle to load function at all, besides if you get like GM's $7,000 tie into your home electronics, and even then it only works at home. So, you know, that's not great, but you know, if you just leave the car running with the AC not on, you can plug in whatever you want. You can run a 12-volt fridge all night if you really want to. You know, you got to keep an eye on your battery, but otherwise it's pretty chill. So I would say, you know, in general, this is not the best Overlander out there, but just being electric, it already has an advantage there with the ability to run the climate control. So if you're the type of person that is using your truck or your car mainly for like ski missions where you want to go up and hit a ski mission, but you don't live in the ski town and you want a place to camp in the cold, like I would love to do that in this car. And you know, if you're just doing the lightweight version, it's almost like the difference between car camping and backpacking, right? But it's overlanding versus car camping. You know, we're trying to do a lightweight, easy version of this. And what I want is I want to show up here. I want 5 to 10 minutes of setup, and that's what I got. And you know, for being on a nice comfy air mattress in an air conditioned area with plenty of airflow and stuff like that, you could do a hell of a lot worse. Okay, that was actually so huge. I have been trying to learn to play guitar for a while, trying to self-teach. I'm terrible at it. Finally gave in, got lessons, and I just had my third lesson right before leaving on this crazy trip. And sitting here looking at this awesome sunset, I just, for the first time in my life, changed chords fast enough to remain on the beat for a song. And that's an amazing feeling. I'm only ever gonna feel that once. And just a reminder, if you wanna learn something, take a lesson. Experts exist and they can teach you stuff more than I can teach you through, you know, stupid overlanding videos where I don't even know what I'm doing. So anyway, if you wanna learn to play guitar, it's really hard. You're gonna feel really dumb. I certainly do. But that felt amazing. And I'm definitely not gonna play guitar on camera because I don't have that kind of confidence, but doing it on that time lapse was kind of cool, so I'm feeling good. I wanted to show you, I didn't think to do this when I got here, but I'm at 55%. I wasn't remotely thinking about range because generally I know where charging stations are. I think charging stations in California at least are pretty good, and getting, honestly, even when I go back to the Midwest, I don't have any problems with charging stations. But the main thing is I'm going to leave that running, charge up my phone. And I am going to cook some dinner. I'll show a little bit of that process, but after that I'm gonna turn off the camera because the main reason I come out here is to get away from things, and that involves turning off the camera and not being on and disappearing for a second. Oh, there goes an F-150. Yeah, I'm gonna call it a night. Good morning, gamers. Slept pretty good in the Blazer. Took a little bit of time to get settled. I had to put my camping box under here because there's a lot of empty space there and you kind of fall down into it. So I put some stuff under here and slept on this side, and my feetsies don't touch the back quite. So pretty comfy. And last night, before I went to sleep, I just put on the car and listened to some music for a little bit and just had the vents blowing, no AC or anything. Then kept these windows open, and I had a net over this one, plenty of airflow. So generally I prefer not to sleep with the climate control on, obviously. You know, I'm out here to be out in nature, but the awareness that if it gets too cold or super muggy or whatever, you can just solve that problem instantly, it is a nice thing to have in your back pocket. There's certainly been nights of camping where I had to huddle inside a gas car with the engine running because it got so cold. So I like knowing that I have that, and just being able to ventilate the whole system and like have some cool air just like fanned onto me while I was like getting settled into my sleeping bag was really nice. So far I give it great reviews. All right, we got the car all packed up. Camp is cleaned up. Nice, easy one day in, one day out. I had like 4 hours of chilling by the camp last night, and then woke up around 6:30 this morning. It's like 10 now, so nice 3.5 hour morning where I got to put up my chair over there, play some guitar, read, chill, listen to some music. You know, be out here in nature. It's awesome. You can't do it while you're in the car, so that's why I'm a big fan of car camping, not just overlanding where you're trying to spend as much time as possible in the car. I want to get the car, bring my stuff here, set up, and then have plenty of room to run around and explore. And that's what I got to do this morning. So I'm going to try to hit some more trail on the way out, just so that we get a little more than what I've given you so far, and put the truck, or the SUV, to the test a little bit more. So let's get out there. But before we get fully going, I just want to point out one thing real quick. This is a Blazer LT. It's from 2024 when they only did the LT2 models. I leased it for basically $8 grand all in for 2 years, so it was the cheapest one at the time. And that's the one I'd recommend because if you notice, it has the smaller wheels. The RS comes on much bigger wheels, which means you get much less sidewall. And while this is not, you know, a true off-road tire or anything, we got quite a bit of sidewall. And that's really important when you're out here because the biggest thing you got to deal with is, can your tires handle it? And I also have a air down kit, so if we get into something where I can't get over it, you know, I can try dropping the PSI down to 20, maybe 18. I don't want to go any lower than that on sort of a low profile eco tire. But, you know, between the amount of sidewall and the ability to air down, I think this should work out pretty well, but I wouldn't try this in an RS and I definitely wouldn't try it in an SS. All right, so we're gonna try to give you a little more for your money because last night I was not feeling very ambitious. I had driven probably 8 or 9 total hours before the camera ever turned on, and then had about an hour up the mountain, and then had to find a spot with only 2 hours of light remaining. And frankly, I didn't really want to set up camp in the dark. I really needed to just relax. And while I like this part, I'm out here to spend time in nature, not to spend time in my car. And I mean, I like spending time in my car, don't get me wrong. And this is a lot comfier than when I did the same road in the Tahoe. But, you know, here's where I lifted a wheel in the Tahoe. Oh, hey, there we go. Easy, easy. Yeah, I normally I'm like, I just drive until I find a campsite that gets me really excited. And this time I found one very quickly that was just perfect. I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful view. This road ended up being a little more traveled than I thought. There's like a backcountry campsite down it. And I think just a couple guys with side-by-sides were kind of dicking around at night, which, you know, happens. So there's definitely more off the beaten path places I could go. But, you know, I'm just getting the feet wet and testing out how the car does. And so far, I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, this is not super ambitious. There's nothing crazy, nothing that you couldn't do in a Subaru Crosstrek or something. But you know, that's all you really need. And I really enjoy just taking it slow. And honestly, the best part is that I can hear things. I can hear birds, I can hear woodpeckers. This whole forest is full of woodpeckers. It's what woke me up in the morning. Yeah, and like, I'm not just listening to blah, 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 blah. That's great, but this is just so much more pleasant. And if you're out here to enjoy nature, you know, it's nice to know that I'm in something that is a little gentler on nature. I mean, ultimately, can overlanding ever be sustainable is a different question, because I'm still in a 5,000 pound vehicle at the end of the day. But I do like just knowing that I'm moving through the forest quietly. I'm not, you know, making a bunch of noise if I go past anyone, and there's just a little hum to let you know, hey, I'm coming around a corner. So yeah, I like doing it this way. And while I'd love to get a much more ambitious EV Overlander, those aren't cheap yet. And this, even though it technically had a $52,000 sticker price, this was cheaper to lease than a Honda Civic at the time. It was cheaper than any gas car I could find. And I needed, you know, 4 wheels and the ability to haul some gear and some people into the woods. And it turned out that that was the cheapest way. This was $273 a month for 24 months with $2,000 due at signing. Basically, I told them I want to pay $8 grand over 2 years, and that's as much as I'll do. You can decide how much I put down versus how much comes out at the end. But I'm really happy with what I got for that. For $270 a month, I mean, this thing rocks. And you know, it's not a built Overlander. I'm not putting 35s on it. But if your goal is to just get out here, this can definitely do it. All right, so we are now back right by the main road. Gonna hit back on the road. There's some cars back there airing up and airing down, but we didn't end up having to do that. If I did get stuck, that was my main option for potentially getting a little more grip. But we didn't need it. The car did really well. You know, it's definitely not a true overlander, but if you just want to car camp and explore, here's proof, man. You can get out here, you can hit the dirt. You're gonna have a comfier ride than anything with a solid axle. And you know, with all-wheel drive and a bit of ground clearance, you know, it comes down to skill and picking your lines just as much as it comes to the vehicle. You know, obviously an easier vehicle, you're not gonna have to be or a more capable vehicle, you're not gonna have to worry about lines as much, but in something like this, you can make it work. Now, let's talk about what we learned about efficiency, what we learned about EV camping, and what we learned about the Blazer EV's capability. All right, so what about the experience of EV camping? Now, this is not as big as my truck, and I haven't figured out quite the right way to level out the bed. As I pointed out, there's a gap in between where the seat folds and the back of the other seat rests, and that's right where my head goes. So I stuffed a camping bin, this guy under there, and a pillow, and it worked. It wasn't quite as comfy, but that's not an EV specific thing. It's just a weird way they've laid this out. GM, for all of their benefits on the EV stuff, has not done a great job at packaging these. Like somehow a Tesla Model Y has a frunk and more space in the back and is smaller and weighs 800 pounds less. But that goes to show that even in an EV that maybe isn't the best for it, still works pretty well. I loved knowing that if I need to do this when it's a million degrees or really cold, I can do it because I have climate control. You know, the desert out near here, I don't go camping all summer because most of the stuff around San Diego is just the desert, and it's 85 degrees when you're sleeping. And like, that's fine, but like during the day, if you want to stay out for 2 days in a row, at some point you need to get out of that heat. And an awning's nice, but being able to just recharge yourself, you know, with a little bit of AC is pretty nice. Also, you gotta note that it's quiet. It's really quiet, and I love that. The reason I come out here is because yeah, there's nothing. There's no one making any noise except for crazy people on side-by-sides. You know, you're away from the hubbub of it all. And I just got to sit quietly out on a rock and like be in a place that, even though it's not that far from humanity, it felt like I had my own little corner of the forest. And you know, this is your public land. Use it. Get out there. And you know, if you can do it on an EV, even better. If you just want to do it in your RAV4 or whatever you have now, go do it. These things are only getting better. But as far as EV experience, I am 100% convinced that like I want my camping rig to be an EV. I can't afford a Rivian, and the rest haven't become cheap yet. So as these get returned on leases and as mileage goes up, like I do think this is a really good option if you just like, you have 30 grand, you want an electric experience, and you want to be able to car camp. But it wouldn't be a review if I didn't point out a couple things that could be better here. First off, number one thing you got to do is change out these tires. I mean, they're not bad tires. They did pretty well on some tough terrain for something that is not marketed as being able to do that. And that's another note, right? Like Chevy doesn't say that this is an off-road vehicle. They're not making any claims about it. It's just me testing the vehicle I already have, which is what you should do. If you have a car, that's the right car to start with. Doesn't matter what it is. The further you can push it and the more willing you are to risk scrapes and getting stuck, the more fun you're gonna have, and you know, the more value there's gonna be there. But for this car, the fact that the front motor's very big and the rear one's very small, I don't love, especially for a 5,300 pound car. Just when you're going up a hill and all that weight shifts to the back, immediately I noticed the traction control cutting in. So I didn't have to disable traction control, which would be another thing that I could have done to increase my grip. But just a note, I would also add that, as you can tell, there's a long wheelbase here. The actual number I'll put on the screen right now, but that's why this has 8 inches of ground clearance. Generally, it's better to be lower for an EV, but I think they needed that clearance because of how long that wheelbase is. So bottoming out is definitely your number one concern. I would also add that while I thought it was really great being able to plug stuff in and, you know, turn on the AC or the, you know, speakers if I really wanted to, GM doesn't do a dedicated camp mode like Tesla does. You have to actually like hit the gas pedal 3 times and then the brake while the door is open to disable its auto shutdown feature. And I'd love to just have a camp mode where it automatically leaves the lights off and disables the interior alarm and a couple other things. I didn't lock the doors last night, mostly because I'm not really afraid of anything out here, but also because I didn't want to grab the door and open the handle and potentially set off the alarm. Maybe that doesn't happen, but if there was just a dedicated camp mode, I think GM saying this works, use it when camping, is better than using these sort of workarounds. But that's a software feature that certainly will come later. And one thing that I'm walking away from this video, you know, learning is that this is just only getting better over time. And I'm pretty excited to see where it goes. Obviously, right now, the best value if you really care about overlanding, is probably an internal combustion vehicle. But these things are getting better every year, and this is like one of the first vehicles that to me hits the good enough bar where I'm gonna have fun with it, I'm gonna go out and explore it, and I'm gonna use it because I leased it, it's the car I have, and while I'd love to replace it with something more capable, I can't afford to, and you probably can't either. So get out there, use what you have, go explore your public land, it's yours, and you don't need a $60,000 rig. You don't need to believe what you see in the car commercials. This is something that anyone can do.